Hi, it's Peter here. I've personally insulated 10,000 houses in Brisbane and coastal Queensland. My father taught me to insulate houses back in 1988, and I've taught my sons how to insulate houses. So it's a family business and industry. So if you need some advice, you should get advice from somebody who's qualified. I'm not just a salesperson. I've been in the industry a long time, and there's not any kind of house that I don't know how to insulate or how to cool down in summer or make it warmer in winter. So stick around and I'll run you through some of the problems in the industry, some of the pros and cons of different products, and then you can make up your own mind, and you'll probably know more about insulation at the end of this video than most sales reps selling it. Now, I say all of this because in this industry, if you call 5 companies, you'll probably get 5 totally different opinions about what kind of insulation is the best insulation, you know, how much to put in, what's the best R value, all of those things. And the reason why you'll get 5 different opinions is probably because you're talking to somebody who hasn't been doing the job for very long. And that happens because in this industry, about 70% of a company's work is done in 3 months of the year. We get a big influx of work in summertime in southeast Queensland, and so then that presents a problem for bigger companies. Bigger companies have to hire on sales reps to answer the phone, to do the quotes, to go out and do the installs, and so a lot of those people, they have very limited experience. Sometimes they're not trained at all. Sometimes, I was out in front of a major supplier of bats one day because one of my customers insisted on having bats, and I was there waiting in the morning with the other contractors for them to open, and I got talking to this Cambodian guy, and he literally got told when he was hired, here's the brochure, read the handbook, here's a trailer for you to tow behind your car, and here's a load of bats and a ladder. Off you go. He wasn't given any on-site training at all to install bats. Now that's a real problem in this industry, because if that guy's been doing jobs now for 7 years, I asked him a few questions, and he really didn't know what the standards were. He didn't know what he should do in different types of jobs to make sure it worked. He had no idea what to do. Now, he was a nice guy, and he actually, had been doing the job for a long time at that stage. And I'm sure his jobs today were a lot better than his first jobs. But it's really important that people actually learn the standards, know what's appropriate for electrical and for plumbing when you're dealing with insulation, and also just how to get the best results out of any particular insulation. In fact, in some instances, putting insulation into a house can actually make the house hotter. And I've had customers go with my competitors over the years, and then they ring me up and say, "Hey, am I going crazy? My house actually feels like it's hotter. We got the job done with this other company, and even though you warned us, but they were a better price, and we didn't have the money, so we went with them. But our house seems hotter now. Is that possible?" And yes, it is possible. If the company that did the job or the quote doesn't actually know what they're doing, they can inadvertently change the heat profile of your home, which moves heat from a different part of the house at a different time of the day, and so it'll make it feel like it's a lot hotter than it was before you insulated the house. Installing insulation used to be a trade, like a builder or a plumber or an electrician, and you used to have to do a trade license. And if you've spent 4 years doing an apprenticeship in anything, well, you probably know the standards and you know how to do it, and you learn it well. But in this industry, there's no trade required, and so there's no trade required to sell it, no trade required to install it in Queensland, and so you've got guys that have been doing it for years, but they actually never ever learned how to do it well. So they're just really good at doing bad jobs. If you practice, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If you practice doing it the wrong way, you're going to be very good at doing it the wrong way. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in this industry. For example, just 1% gaps in bats when they're installed. Now, they shouldn't have gaps, and every salesperson will tell you, no, we definitely have no gaps. But I've looked in jobs where you can't actually see the gaps, but when you do a bit of investigation, there's lots of gaps in the job. But 1% gaps in bats will reduce your efficiency of that insulation by up to 30%. And 5% gaps in the bats in the job, and I say bats, it's all insulations, 5% gaps will reduce your efficiency by up to 70%. It really makes sense when you think about it, how much difference gaps make. Uh, you know, if you've got an old fridge where there's just a little gap in the seal of the fridge, the fridge closes fairly good, but there's just that little gap. The fridge won't get cold, and a lot of people have had that experience in life, so they'll understand. But um, say with that fridge, if you put more insulation around the outside of it, it still wouldn't make that fridge get cold. It doesn't matter how thick of a bat you've got, or how high your R value is. If you've got any gaps, it will ruin the job. Just 1% gaps is enough to ruin the job. Another example that might make it clear to you is like in wintertime. If you got your house and you've got your heaters on in winter to keep warm, or that, if you just left one window open, it's probably only 1% of the whole house. But just leaving one like kitchen window open during winter would ruin how much heat you're producing inside the house. It would just the wind would blow a little bit and all of the cold air would come rushing in through that window. Uh, or if I had a house years ago where I used to have a door snake under the front door during winter, because the cold air coming under the front door, just that little a half-inch gap under the front door, you could feel it sitting in the lounge room, just a cold breeze coming in through the front door. So that's where any gaps at all make a huge difference. And in insulation, you need to be very, very careful with your installer to make sure that he knows that and to make sure that he doesn't leave any gaps. Unfortunately, customers think that their roof insulation is like buying a fridge. If you buy a fridge from Harvey Norman or you buy it from Myers, if it's the same brand fridge, you get the same fridge. But insulation's not like that. It's far more about the service of putting it in than it is about the actual product. And bad salespeople, because they know that maybe their installers aren't qualified or they're a bit dodgy, the companies, or just plain because they get paid more to sell more, they will try and sell you more insulation to overcome the gaps and try and pretend that if they put in an R5 instead of an R3, you'll actually get a much better result. But that's not true. Putting that'd be like putting extra blankets on your bed, but leaving your feet out the end and hoping that your feet get warm. It just wouldn't happen. If you've got any gaps, you will ruin the job. Gaps in bats is probably just one example of about 50 different things that a tradesperson can do wrong on installing insulation. And I inspect jobs all the time where the customer says, "Oh, well, I've got these bats and they don't work. I want you to come and remove those bats and put in another type of bat." Now, sales reps in the industry always tell them, "Yes, no problem. Yeah, those other crappy bats, we used to sell them. They don't work. They're not very good," and they get paid to remove them then 5 years after probably the same company put them in. And when I turn up to those jobs, it's very obvious to me what's wrong with the job. There's probably 20 different things that if I fix it up, then the insulation will work. And I normally recommend to fix that job for them if they like. But unfortunately, even if that customer gets their bats removed, gets some new bats put in, if they're not installed well, they end up with the same problem. And then they decide, well, that's as good as insulation is, and we'll just get a bigger air conditioner or a bigger heater in our living room. And that's a really bad outcome for customers. And unfortunately, that happens all the time. And you might be asking yourself, why is it that there's so many people that get away with doing bad work in your industry? And the reason for it isn't only the tradespeople. What it is that customers have never seen an insulation job before. If you get a tradesman to come around and paint your house, you've probably been to lots of people's houses, seen lots of painting jobs, and if he'd spilt paint all over the concrete, you'd probably be thinking, oh, hey, that's not a very good job. Or if his corners weren't cut in neatly, you'd be thinking, hey, didn't this guy even tape up when he did the job? Or maybe you get a tiler, and if you put tiles in the bathroom and they're crooked, you could obviously see that, and you'd go, hey, actually, there's something wrong with this job. I'm not going to pay for it until I get it fixed, because you've seen hundreds of tiling jobs. Now, with roof insulation, it's not like that. The first job you're seeing is probably your own. The first time you look in a roof to see the job is probably the first time you've even looked in a roof. So insulation, it's very difficult for customers to know when they're getting a bad job, because they just don't know what they're looking at. And the guys that come out to do the job, it's not that they're all trying to rip people off. Some of them are really nice guys. They're just not trained, and they just don't know that they're doing a bad job. They actually genuinely think that they're doing a good job. So here's some takeaways. The first thing is, more insulation isn't better. It really depends on the installation. Make sure the company that you get to do your insulation job knows how to do the job, inspects the job, has a process of inspection, because when you pay a labourer $30 an hour to come and crawl through roofs that might be 70 degrees Celsius, unless there's a supervisor, or unless he's the boss himself and he cares about his reputation, it's really, really difficult to make sure that labourer doesn't just cut corners to get out of that hot roof as fast as he can. And a good tradesperson installing bats, can install, two guys can install 100 square meters in about 2 hours. And so they're not on site very long. So big companies just can't employ a supervisor to do the job, like to come around and supervise their work, because it'll be a full-time job just in supervising jobs, right? So they might as well just hope and pray that the person on the job does his job right. Now, good insulation installed on the ceiling will stop 100% of the heat transfer at the ceiling. Now, that's where you want to stop the heat, because that helps you during winter time. If you've got a insulation up underneath your iron, like Anticon blanket is, then any heat generated in your home flows up into this roof cavity, keeps your roof cavity warm before it gets to the insulation. So that's not where you want to put insulation. You want to put it down on your ceiling, so then it can actually benefit you during winter and summer. Now, with insulation, installation is more important than the thickness of your R value. And so what is your R value? Well, R value is really an arbitrary number for your thermal resistance rating. The bigger the number, the better the protection. Just like sunscreen, the bigger the number, the better the protection. So how much insulation do you need? Well, the National Construction Code for Brisbane and coastal Queensland, it's broken up into climate zones for what insulation you do need. So I'm not speaking about other countries or other areas of Australia, but just in Brisbane and coastal Queensland, the recommendation is R2.5 on the ceiling. And so if you install R5, it doesn't make any difference. Once you've stopped 100% of the heat, you can't stop anymore. So selling more just makes your sales reps richer, and that's probably why they recommend to sell some more to you. And it's probably why they'll try and sell you some whirlybirds or roof vents or eave vents or lots of other things as well. But you don't need all of that crap. You just need a good quality insulation installed on the ceiling and installed properly at the right R value. Now, we recommend R3.0. That'll stop 100% of the heat transfer at the ceiling. So how do you even know that insulation is going to help your home? Well, it's actually quite easy to discover whether insulation is going to help. If it's a simple test, just if you've got a step ladder, or if you're physically capable enough to stand on a chair without falling off and breaking your neck, then stand on a chair, put your hand on the ceiling on a hot day, on a Sunday or something. Put your hand on the ceiling. If your ceiling is hotter than the bottom of the internal wall of your home, then that's about how much heat you can stop. Now, for some houses, that'll be 10 degrees. For some, it'll be 15 or 16 degrees. For some, it might only be 3 degrees. But that tells you how much heat transfer you can actually stop. If you can invest in a little laser thermometer for about $30, and you can go around and record all your ceiling temperatures. at different times in the day, and you'll know where your heat's coming from. Now, oftentimes it comes through your ceiling, and so if you test around on your ceiling, you'll find, different rooms are hotter at different times of the day. And if you test on your internal walls, that gives you a good idea of your shade ambient temperature at the bottom of the wall, because hot air rises. Now, if you put your hand on the external wall, like a western wall in the afternoon, that wall might be hot too, and it may need insulation. But as about 70% of your heat in your home comes through your roof, right? 20% of your heat comes through walls and windows, and windows are really a bigger problem than the wall itself normally. And just 10% comes through your floor. So you should focus your finances on the ceiling first, and then do your walls, and then address your floor. That's normally the best bang for buck. With your floors, 10% of your thermal efficiency of your home is lost or gained through the floor. But so how much heat does insulation actually stop coming into your home? Well, that actually depends on how hot your house gets in the first place. Like I said, every house is different. Don't believe sales reps that just say, oh, our insulation will make 10 degrees difference, or 12 degrees, or 15, or whatever. It's not like that. If your house is very, very hot and the heat's coming from the ceiling, then the more heat we can stop, the more difference you'll notice. I've recorded 83 degrees Celsius inside a roof cavity, and so your ceiling temperature on a house in Queensland when it's 40 degrees outside, the roof might be 65 degrees, or even on an average day, or 70 degrees, and your ceiling temperature inside might be 50 or 60 degrees. So you've got 60 degrees of ceiling temperature, and that's where ceiling fans don't work on their own, because ceiling fans just push that hot air off the ceiling down into the house and average the temperature inside the room. And so they actually suck heat out of your roof if you don't have insulation already to stop that happening. So insulation isn't refrigeration, and it's very, very good, and it stops 100% of the heat at the ceiling if you've got a good quality insulation. But unless you manage that insulation properly, you can't expect it to be cooler inside than outside. Now, to manage it is simple. All you do is on during summer, when the nighttime temperature is down at maybe 20, 26 degrees, you open up your house before you go to sleep. And if you wake up early, you close it up. If you like to sleep in, close it up before you go to sleep. And then you let all that cool air into the home in the nighttime, lock it in your home, and then in the morning, it's locked in the home as the day temperature goes up. So as the day temperature goes up to 40 degrees, it might be still 25 degrees, 26 degrees inside the home, plus a couple of degrees that comes in through walls and windows. Now, I've actually had that happen for years and years with houses that I live in, where friends or neighbours come over at 3 o'clock, and you've just come home from work, and they walk into the house. The house has been locked up all day, and they go, "Oh, did you leave your aircon on all day?" Because it's actually 10 degrees cooler inside the home very easily, and it feels like your house is refrigerated when you walk into it. Now, but for that result, you need to manage it properly. I had one lady who said to me, that called me up and said, "Oh, hey, actually, it's 40 degrees outside and it's 42 degrees in my kitchen." And I said, "Yes, that means your insulation's working great." And which wasn't the answer she wanted, but but I said, "Well, are you managing it?" And she said, "Yes, I lock it up every morning, except for my kitchen window. I've got to leave my kitchen window open. You need some air coming in." And I said, "Well, if it was wintertime and you're trying to keep your house warm and you had heaters on inside your house, would you just leave one window open to let some air in?" No, you wouldn't, because it'd just ruin the benefit of the heating your home. And so then, of course, she shut that window. She got the results she expected after that. Of course, the reverse is true when you want to manage your insulation for winter. In wintertime, you want to open your house up in the middle of the day when it's hottest. Let your warm air into the home, right? If it's a warm day, when you've got that warm air inside the home, lock up all your windows and doors before it gets cold. So I say to people, oftentimes people don't close their homes up in winter until the cold air is in the home. When they feel cold inside, then they go around and close up the windows and doors. By that time, it's too late. If you close it up preemptively, you close it up about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock before your cold night air comes down, then by 6 o'clock, your home will be a lot warmer inside than it is outside, and people will walk in and go, wow, it's so warm in here. And that's the only way to manage the insulation. Now, of course, you don't need to do that, but that will save you a lot of electricity on heating and cooling your home. Actually, if you do it that way, it'll save about 40% on your heating and cooling costs of your home. Of course, this assumes that you run electric air conditioners or heaters in your home. So which should you do first? Should you air condition your home or insulate your home first? Now, obviously, you'd expect the insulation sales people to say insulate it first, and you'd expect the air conditioning people to say air condition it first. But there's some good reasons why you want to put insulation in first before you put aircon in. Now, if you go to an air conditioning company, they always ask you if your house is insulated. And unfortunately, they don't tell you, hey, you should go and get insulation before you buy an air conditioner. They just say, oh, well, it's not insulated, so over here to the bigger models. They get paid to sell air conditioners. And they know that if it's not insulated, you'll need a bigger air conditioner to air condition that space. So so they know to get the outcome for you, they sell you a bigger air conditioner. Now, they make more money out of doing that, so why would they tell you to buy insulation first? They wouldn't. Now, oftentimes, the price difference between the small air conditioner to air condition your home and the bigger air conditioner to air condition your home will actually offset your insulation costs by almost all of it. You know, depending on the quality of the insulation you're putting in, it could actually be substantially paid for by getting your insulation done first. Actually, one time I had a customer buy a huge air conditioner for his living room because he just couldn't stand the heat in the Australian summers in this new house that he'd moved into, and he paid $5,000 for it, and then it wasn't keeping up. It couldn't keep the temperature down, even running all day. So he called me and he asked me, and I said, look, just put insulation in. And so we put insulation in. He rang me back and he said, oh, Pete, I so wish I had called you first, because now that we've got the insulation, we mostly don't use the air conditioner. So my advice is don't get air conned until you get insulated. While we're talking about cons in the insulation industry, we might as well talk about roof vents. Roof vents are like the would you like fries with that of the roof insulation industry, and whether they're solar powered or the mechanical vents, they just don't move enough heat for them to make a difference. Now, if you there's lots and lots of sales guff around solar vents, but the easy thing to do for you to test out how effective they will be is just leave your bathroom vent on during the day. Just turn that on. It's an electric motor that's pumping air up into the roof cavity all day long out of the house. And so that's a similar effect to the solar vent on your roof, extracting that heat. And I think you'll find that actually if you leave your exhaust fan on in your bathroom all day long, it probably makes no difference at all to the heat in your home. That should give you a good idea about the results you'll get from putting a solar vent on the roof. Now, the other thing about vents, whether they're whirlybirds on the roof or solar vents, is that you've got a perfectly waterproof roof now, and you're asking a sales rep or a tradesperson to cut a hole in that roof and put in a vent. And so they're just little aluminium vents. Normally they're not very strong. They've got 3 screws to hold the spinning top on, and every time there's a storm, I get about 20 phone calls the next day saying, hey, my vent leaks, my vent blew off, my vent squeaks. And sure, they're tested to 200 kilometers an hour in wind tunnels, but they don't throw sticks at them in wind tunnels. And so when you put them on the real world on your roof, they often don't work well. And they're also often not installed well, and they leak. Now, if you ignore all of those factors, in 5 years or 10 years, sometime the vent's bearings will fail and it will start to squeak and make a noise, and then you will need to be paying more money to replace them. Now, if all of that didn't convince you not to put vents on your roof, and you're still thinking, oh, hey, but surely it'll make it better for my insulation. Well, it doesn't. The insulation is on the ceiling. It stops 100% of the heat transfer. So cooling your roof space, all it does is make it a nicer home for possums and birds and other things to live up in your roof space. It doesn't help your insulation at all. And in fact, in wintertime, it'll actually work against you. In wintertime, if you thought that it helped in summer, in wintertime, vents will be sucking the heat out of your roof, and potentially out of your home if your insulation is not a good insulation. So don't get conned by roof vents, please. Stay away from them. I could sell them to people. I refuse to sell them to people because over the years they just cause lots of trouble, and they have no benefit to my customer. Lastly, one of the big questions I get asked on the first phone call with customers is, should I insulate the garage? Or normally they actually say, oh, I don't want to include the garage. Now, a lot of sales reps, because they're trying to bring the price down, make it more affordable for the customer, they'll say, oh, don't include the garage. For me, if the garage is attached to the main house, as in that it shares the same roof, if you don't insulate the garage, it comes down to gaps in your job, and you will ruin your job, because what happens is actually, if you don't insulate your garage, when you insulate your main house, you stop 100% of the heat transfer in the main house. That means your roof cavity will get hotter, and vents don't help that, but it will get hotter, and then that extra heat will be coming through your garage ceiling and then flowing through into your house through either the adjoining wall or the doorway through into your main living room. So definitely insulate your garage when you insulate your main house. It's cheaper to do it at the same time, and over the years, every summer I go out to do garages that last summer people went, oh, hey, we thought we'd get away with not doing it, and in the end they have to do it, but they end up paying more to do it later. The other question I get asked is, we just want to insulate the upstairs. We don't want to do imagine a two-story house with a rear bedroom that sticks out from the main house that's a low set part, or a granny flat or that. Now, most of the time people think, oh, well, the upstairs is hot, so we only need to insulate the upstairs. We don't need a quote on the downstairs. But again, it's the same thing. Hot air rises in your home. If we insulate your upstairs and we don't insulate the downstairs that's attached to it, actually you might make your upstairs area hotter, or it might feel like it's hotter than if we hadn't insulated at all. And that's because the heat will come in through the downstairs, and then it just rises up into the top upstairs, and depending on the orientation of the house, that might be heat that comes in early in the morning, and then it's trapped up in the upstairs all day long, and you might think, oh, hey, it's hotter now than it was before. So please, you have to do the whole job. Now, the other part of that job that's not talked about is the bulkhead or the in-ceiling wall. It's got a number of different names, but almost no companies on the market will quote this in-ceiling wall. So if you imagine that you're standing in that attached room, sometimes it's a low set area that's been turned into a garage, and you imagine you're standing in that garage looking back towards the house. In front of you there's a wall, if you're standing in the roof, that is. In front of you there's a wall, and that wall is actually the wall inside the bedroom upstairs. Now, if we don't insulate that wall, again, it comes down to gaps. You're going to trap the heat inside your garage roof, so that wall will be hotter now than it was beforehand. If we don't insulate it, it ruins the job. So with insulation, you really have to do the whole job, and you have to do it properly. And the product that you use isn't as important as doing the job properly. So let's look at the different products on the market to insulate your home. There's fiberglass bats, polyester bats, the pump-in cellulose fibre insulation, and there's one other product, which is your foil reflective products, which I'll talk about at the end. So what's the difference between these three? Well, actually, as far as heating and cooling your home goes, there's not much difference. If you've got a good quality bat or a good quality cellulose installed by a good tradesman, then you're going to get a good outcome as far as heat and cold goes. Now they're all priced differently. The fiberglass bats are cheap for a reason. Then there's the polyester bats, and then there's the cellulose fiber, which is the best product on the market, in my opinion. And in 10,000 homes that I've insulated, I've never ever had a customer that didn't have a good outcome that they're happy with the cellulose fiber. So other than heating and cooling your home with insulation, what other aspects should you be looking at? Well, the most important is your fire and vermin aspects. Now, all insulations are made to the Australian standards for fire and vermin. So it doesn't matter which product you buy, it should meet the standard. Now, but the standard isn't set very high. It just means that rats don't eat it. And that's not a very good standard. Check out my videos on rats in bats if you want to know what actually happens with bats. Now, the thing is, rats can burrow in bats, and they build little insulated homes in bats. They're mammals like us. They want to be warm in winter and cool in summer, and so they live in your home. Now, before you put insulation in your roof, I'll almost guarantee that you don't have rats' nests up in your roof. You won't have rats living in your roof because it's hot. There's not much food up there, and so it's not a good environment for them. But once you put insulation in your roof, now they've got a nice little fabric that they can burrow through and build nests in. Now, rats love fiberglass bats. Almost certainly, if your fiberglass has been in your roof for 5 years, you'll have rats living in it. And if you've got rats living in it, you'll most probably have snakes going up there and eating the rats. So it becomes a whole ecosystem. And once you've got the smell of rats up in your roof, any rat that's walking past in the neighborhood smells that, and he goes up into your roof, right? And so this problem becomes worse and worse over time. I've had houses where the bats in the roof are so rancid with rat pee and poo and dead rat skeletons and that from when people bait them, and that you can't do anything with the bats but remove them. So it's a costly job. We pull them all out. So that's important. It's an important consideration. Now, the cellulose fiber, the pump-in insulation, it never gets rats. In 10,000 jobs, I've never seen a rat build a nest in cellulose fiber. I've seen them try to build nests on top of the cellulose fiber. They might drag some leaves or twigs over that are up in the roof of that, and they might try and build a nest on top of it. But I've not once seen a mouse or a rat burrow in the cellulose fiber and build a nest. Now, so that's important. Now, we actually give a lifetime guarantee on the cellulose fiber insulation that it won't get any rats or mice build nests in it. That's not available with any other product, and it's the life of your house. So that's a guarantee that you can pass on to the next owner, and it comes from the manufacturer. Now, the next aspect is fire. Now, sure, fiberglass bats don't burn. They won't self-ignite or anything like that. Polyester bats will melt away from a flame. But the cellulose fiber is the only one where I can actually hold a handful of cellulose fiber at 40 millimeters thick, and I can put an oxy torch on my hand, and my hand will be protected by the insulation. Now, that's pointing out that every other product on the market, if you have a fire, the insulation has got no ability to protect your home. The cellulose is the only one that can actually assist in saving your home in a fire. So yes, it's counterintuitive that a product that's made from recycled paper can actually assist in saving your house in a fire. But in exactly the same way as, steel doesn't float, but steel ships float. It's the same thing. This product is treated with borax and boracic acid, which makes it fire retardant. It'll char where the flame is, but it's got a 0 flame spread rating. Now, no other product can do that. If you've got polyester bats in your roof, they melt away from the flame, expose your joist to the flame, and the melting plastic causes lots of toxic gases up in your roof. The fiberglass will do the same, melt away from the joists, expose them to the flame and the heat, and then your house will burn down. It's actually been shown that cellulose fiber can add 3 hours burn time to an average house. That's 3 hours that you can actually have to get your family and your loved ones out of the house. Just watch the video in our links below for the big burn. It's a really good test, and it was done by fireys in America based on which insulation was best for fire, and hands down the fireys walked away and said the cellulose fiber protected the home for a lot longer and stopped the fire spreading through the home. Okay, so let's tick them off. Cellulose fiber, because it's pumped in, there's 0 gaps. So then you get 100% efficiency from your insulation. It's more fire retardant than any other product on the market, and the only insulation that can assist in saving your house in a fire. As far as vermin goes, cellulose fiber is treated with borax and boracic acid, and the borax is a natural insect killer, so it kills any ants, spiders, cockroaches, silverfish, even dust mites that are up in your roof. Now, once you get rid of all of that, you get rid of the food that rats, mice eat, and you also, obviously, if you don't have mice, there's less chance for you to have snakes up in your roof. That makes it a much, much safer ecology in your roof, as it were, and also the borax kills mold. So even if you get a roof leak and there's some water sitting up in your roof, you don't get mold in your roof. So it's a very safe environment. Even after 10 or 20 years of having cellulose in a roof, if I climb in there, it smells nice. But if you climb into a roof that's had rats and mice in the bats, I've actually been in roofs where you can't breathe for how toxic it smells up in the roof with the. But what about roof leaks? If you get a roof leak, it's bad no matter what happens. If it's a big leak, it's going to do some damage. But bat salesmen always tell people, oh, but the water with bats, you can pull them out, hang them on the line, dry them out, and put them back in. I can assure you, in 25 years of doing this job, I've never ever seen an insurance company do that with bats. They just pull them out, put them in landfill. But the worst thing that happens is that if you have a roof leak that's a small leak with bats, when you hop up in there in the next day, small to medium leaks aren't going to tear the plaster down. They're going to drip through a light somewhere in the lounge room or the bedroom, and so you know there's a leak where the water comes through a light fixture or that. But when you climb in the roof, you can't see with bats where that water came in. The next day it's dry up there, the top of the bats are dry, but when you pick up the bat, it's all wet underneath, and you've got no way of knowing where that water came from. It's very hard to track down a roof leak with bats. And if you didn't know there was a leak, that water would just sit underneath the bat for a long time until it gets mold on the ceiling. And it really is difficult with polyester bats and fiberglass bats because the top of the bat's dry, the bottom of the bat's wet, you don't know where the leak came from, and the water might sit there for a long, long time before it dries out. Also, all bats are hydrophobic, whereas the cellulose fiber is hygroscopic. Now that means that if you put a bat underneath a tap, the water just runs straight through it. And you might think that's a good idea, but it's really not. It stops you from being able to identify where roof leaks are easy. With the cellulose fiber, it'll be clear that there's a wet spot on the top, and if that's even dried out, you'll still be able to see a little indent where the water dripped in near the area. The water will be held in the same space because it absorbs the water and holds it in one area, stops the damage spreading into multiple rooms. And the other thing about it is that the cellulose insulation, if it's a small to medium leak that you don't even know about, which 100 times I've been in roofs where I've said to people, hey, look, actually your roof's leaking. Oh, no, we had a roofer up there last week and he said it was fine. Yes, but it's leaking. And I show them the photos and they go, oh, okay, yes, that's definitely leaking. But with cellulose fiber, with a roof leak that's a small to medium leak, the water will be absorbed in the cellulose fiber, and then because it's hygroscopic, as the surface dries, it'll wick water back up to the surface and it'll dry 100% of the water out right through the product, and that normally happens within a few days. I actually had a lady ring me on a, like a public holiday, and it was Saturday night, and she was all frantic because her hot water system had actually, a solar hot water on the roof had exploded, and the water had come in from the big tank on the roof, and it had gone through her cellulose fibre, and it had run down all the walls, and she had a tongue and groove ceiling, so the ceiling didn't come down, and I said, oh, look, I actually couldn't get there the next day on the Sunday, so I had to come out on the Monday. I came out on the Monday, and by the time I got there, I said to her, look, actually, it's a hot day yesterday, and your insulation's almost all dry. It's almost dried out fully now, and so there's not much for me to do. I can repair it and just fix it up a little bit where it was indented, but really the insulation was okay. Now that saved her a costly repair job on her cellulose fibre insulation, and the water didn't do much other damage other than that. So back to our list. It's better for fire, it's better for vermin, it's better because it's pumped in, and you can pump it into any kind of roofs, raked roofs, exposed beam roofs, A-frames, all sorts of things. It's better for the environment, and it's better if you have a roof leak. One last thing on environment. With all bad insulation, they come in non-recyclable bags. The bad insulation comes in a heavy-duty, thick plastic bag when it comes out to your site, and for an average kind of house, we'll use 20 to 40 bags. So if you imagine throwing away 20 to 40 industrial wheelie bin bags every single job, we do 2 or 3 jobs a day. That's a lot of plastic waste. During summer, even though we don't sell a lot of bat jobs, I still end up with trailer loads of plastic that can't be recycled going to landfill. Now, the cellulose fibre, on the other hand, we don't use plastic bags to come to site. We use a recycled bag. It's like a fertilizer bag, and we reuse them, refill them 1,000 times over. So it's a lot more environmentally friendly than any of the other bat products. Now, I said at the start of this section that I would talk about foil products at the end. All foil products, please stay away from them. They're not very good for insulating houses. Just think about it. Aluminium foil. Aluminium's a good conductor of heat. It's not, that's why we use aluminium Coke cans, because they get cold in the fridge better and quicker. It's not a good insulator at all. And just on the reflective issue, there's no radiation inside your roof. All the sun's rays stop on the iron, and from then on, it's convected heat. And aluminium foil's got no ability to stop convected heat. If you think that foil works in your roof, well, then that's like saying that you'll get sunburnt inside your house. It's just not possible. It doesn't happen. Foil products do work on a basis of stopping convection or slowing down convection by trapping an airspace underneath the foil. So if they're installed properly, the airspace underneath the foil will actually have some benefit, but you could staple black plastic to your joists and achieve the same benefit. Foil products, my opinion, is very low. They say that they have huge R values, but that's because they test them against radiated heat only. They don't test them against convected or passive heat. If you want to know how well it works, just grab a sample from the sales rep, wrap it around your kettle, boil the kettle, put your hand on the back of it, and see how long it takes the heat to come through from the kettle. That should convince you not to buy foil, I would think. So as promised, if you're paying attention in this video, you will have learned more about insulation than most people selling it know, and you'll know more about it than most people that install it. I hope you liked my video and all the information. Follow the links in below, like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that. Help us out. And if you want a quote, certainly send us an email, fill in our little online form, and we'll get a quote under the way for you for the best product for your house. And saying that, I certainly recommend the Cellulose Fibre product. It's by far the best, but we do give you a quote if we can on the other products. Please remember to help us out by sharing this on social media. I don't have a big budget for any of this stuff. I make these videos myself, even though I'm not really equipped for making videos. I'm much better in a roof. But if you can click the share button, click the like button, share it to your friends, that'd be fantastic. Put a comment for us. I answer all of the inquiries on the comments for people. I'm very happy to help people. I'm very passionate about insulation, and I really want to see people put in a good quality insulation and get a really great result for their home. So thank you very much for listening to my video, and yeah, hope we can make your house cooler in summer and warmer in winter.